I've tried to divide this video into roughly 3 parts. One where I talk about what it's like to find out that a loved one is dying, and then the next part where I talk about what it's like giving end-of-life care, treatment, and um, presence to a dying loved one. And then finally, I want to talk about, of course, what it's like to see that transition and to deal with the aftermath for you and the rest of your family. I want to talk about, really there's a million things I want to talk about, but I want this video to be helpful to somebody. I don't want to sit here and ramble on and on. Maybe I can do that just for my patrons. So I'm going to try to be concise here, and let's talk about this first aspect of this deeply horrifying experience, what it's like to find out that your loved one is going to pass away. My grandpa, who had just gotten home from the hospital, was not going to recover. We were looking towards end-of-life treatment options and minimizing his pain. And when you get a call like that, it just feels like your entire world is collapsing in. It feels surreal. I mean, I'd even take psychedelics only because they create these altered states of mind that I find so provocative and interesting. But let me tell you, in a sickening way, finding out that a loved one of yours, a deeply loved one of yours, is going to face this ultimate reality is the ultimate trip. And that's not a good thing. That's just to say that your bearings, your grounding is going to be completely inverted. The difference between finding out that a loved one has already passed away and preparing for the end-of-life care process is pretty different, I'll just say. I don't have very much experience with death whatsoever, but 3 years ago, my other grandfather did pass away, and it was in that form. It was a phone call that told me that it was a heart attack, and there was nothing that I could do. And that still launched me on my own grief journey, and that was very, very painful, and is still painful. But I would just say it's a different type of pain when it's still going on. For me, the main reason that the call was different between finding out that my grandpa had passed away and finding out that my current grandpa, Don, was still dying was the sense of duty that I felt. And I've been reflecting, like, was this a coping mechanism? What was it about my mind that completely switched into a different mode when I found out that a loved one was dying? Because I want to tell you that I became a different person. I took on a completely different role that I've never taken in my life. And as I share my experience in this video, I hope it makes that impression to you as well, because you really don't expect to find part of your life's purpose in the catastrophe of a loved one leaving this world. And for me to learn that my ability or willingness or capacity to face my grandpa's leaving this world directly by his side with the rest of my family and help him with pain management and feeding him in his final days on this planet, to learn that I had that strength transformed me forever. It matured me. It re-cemented what my priorities need to be. I had completely built, again, like all humans do, I built a construct that assumed I wouldn't die. And seeing the patriarch, in a way, of the family, my grandmother, of course, would be the matriarch, seeing that deteriorate, their physical form deteriorate, it reminds you what matters. And it puts you in a mindset of presence, of awareness, because one, you don't have time to waste. And you never have time to waste. But this reminds you. And two, it shows you. It shows you exactly what happens to all of us. So you've just gotten this call from your mom, and now you're wondering, what is everybody else feeling? My grandmother has been married to my grandpa for 50 years. He has 3 daughters. I'm a grandson. That's deeply close. But what are these people feeling? So finding this out, that a loved one is actively leaving, is painful for so many different reasons, and I guess you could just multiply it by your sensitivity and the amount of family members you have or loved ones you have that are affected by it. Because seeing that, or just knowing about it and hearing the different perspectives as it's happening before you've even arrived is sad. You don't want to see You don't want to see your entire family hurting like that. And it's these rare events that do cause an entire family to feel pain. I want to move into a much more serious part. It's much more personal and intimate than just finding out through a phone call what happened. And it's arriving where he is. And I want to talk about what it was like to care for him in his final days along with the rest of my family. I want to talk about what it was like to be partially or in large part responsible for his pain management via morphine and I believe Ativan for anxiety, and all that goes with the dying process. You know, my family has never done this before. We've never had to help somebody who we in some ways see as the adult leave this world. And so there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of aimlessness, really. I mean, if there's one thing that I would say about Americans or maybe just the West in general is we have no formal way of dying. And that, as somebody who rants endlessly about the need for shamanic ritual and culture, that left a really big impression on me because seeing that we don't have ingrained cultural mechanisms that include procedures, thought processes, and acceptable emotions at the deathbed of a loved one outside of religion is frustrating to me. And I am very proud of my family in our new position that we were put in for getting ourselves together. We held ourselves together for my grandpa. And I'm not someone who has ever done that before. I've never helped somebody with pain management or anxiety management, especially somebody that's a relative. And taking this role changed me, and it showed me that this may be something like my purpose. So I've arrived at my grandpa's home, and we're trying to all get sorted out what exactly we do. You know, we all know what the result will be, but the reality is the dying process is exactly the opposite of the labor process. If you imagine what a home birth would have been like, you can really understand what a family might have to do for a home death, because a lot of teamwork is required and a lot of things need to be done, and a lot of people have a lot of different skills that need to be applied in different areas. And we all have our weaknesses and areas that we're uncomfortable dealing with around the death of a loved one, an actively dying loved one. But in a family that's cohesive, which I'm so proud to say mine was, those can all be balanced out. We all played our part in this catastrophic event, and we minimized the catastrophe. When you see your loved one in a condition at the end of their life, you're going to be very emotional. You're going to be distraught. But if you keep remembering that there is perspective to life, and perspective means that you can stand at different positions and see different things. And when you see a loved one in their most vulnerable position like that, and you see their physical form weakening, when you see their physical form weakening, you can remember that the pattern of a human being is hardly physical. You can view the death of a loved one as a frightening, tragic thing to avoid, or you can view it as an opportunity for maturation, truly, to truly become an adult, to watch somebody that you descended from leave this world, and to help them do it. That's one of the oldest things humans have been doing. And so when I was given that opportunity, I took it. The first order of business after I arrived at my grandparents' house was to get a hospice nurse actually to come out there. For whatever reason, and for our luck, the hospice company was being so frustrating that day. The person that was supposed to come out at a certain time hadn't come out, and so we were forced to go through a series of administrative hurdles and phone calls just to get somebody to help us out here, despite the fact these people are always supposed to be able to help. So even though we were already kind of aimless and confused, now we were even more aimless and confused because the supposed, arbiters of knowledge in the death area were kind of falling through for us. Long story short, we finally get a hospice worker who comes and gives us, honestly, pretty helpful information as to how to help my grandpa in his final few days. And then they left, really. They came, they gave us basically a morphine prescription, And they left. I believe it was the moment that the hospice nurse left that I realized that I had found my purpose, that I wanted to take a role in this death that did not shy away from it at all, because she had shown me and confirmed what I already suspected, which is that I possess something within myself that could handle the greatest tragedy that could befall me. And so, me and my Uncle Brad went and got the morphine from the pharmacy. And this is where my story kind of begins, really, because over the next 2 days, I would spend basically all my time at my grandmother's house, along with the rest of my family at my grandfather's side, watching his pain, watching his discomfort, spending time with him, talking to him. Even if people aren't always able to respond verbally, it is important to spend time with your dying loved ones. So that's what I was doing for 2 days. And also, small tasks you don't think about, like slight movements of a heavy person, can be very difficult without teamwork. So we were all coming together for that as well. So, I mean, there are so many things to say about what that first day is like, of the family trying to understand how much longer we have, what exactly is going on, because obviously there's no clock here. We don't know when a person's time actually is to go, but we know that it is the time of hospice and end of life care. But to a newbie family like me, does that mean a week? Does that mean 2 weeks? Does that mean tonight? So we're in a state of deep anxiety and not knowing what's going on. But I hope that I think the unifying task of caring for my grandfather as a team really helped us. I really think it did. So as that first day comes to a close and family begins to leave, I volunteered to help manage his pain overnight. And what I did, which is something that I'm still thinking about because of how powerful it was, is I stayed by his side overnight. And I'm very curious, and I will love to hear in the comments below if anybody else has ever been through this experience of really being with somebody who's transitioning, but it changes you in ways that I'm still struggling to articulate, because it it brought everything to center. It brought everything to truth. It brought everything to be aligned with what reality actually was. And what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that we play this silly, silly game of immortality. Spending the night with my dying grandfather was the ultimate ego death. I don't know how else to say it. I I am so grateful that I could be there with him. And I truly hope that somebody does it for me as well. And it makes me want to cry when I think about the people who don't get this opportunity. To remember. To remember where we are. Because when I look out and I see these angry people and these people only wanting to create more suffering in this world and conflict, I don't understand it at all. Because the tide of time is going to sweep all of us away, my friend. It's going to sweep all of us away. And knowing and watching that tide of time take your relative will never be, you'll never be the same. You'll never be the same. From midnight to 4 a.m., I sat next to my grandfather in what was the deepest presence I have ever felt in my life, and lovingly accepted the transformation that is inevitable to all. I truly feel I did that. And by doing that, you become a monster to people, because now you can handle watching the physical form leave. You can handle watching the physical form leave when you get this funny little intimation while sitting next to the skull, as the monk would have, that the skull is part of the game. You becoming the skull is part of the game. And you being afraid of it, in the same way a child might be afraid of certain game rules that it doesn't understand the reasons for, may be pointless. Before I knew it, the next day was there, the sun was up, and everybody was back by his side. And one of the harder aspects of having somebody pass at your house is just the sadness of seeing all of their friends and loved ones come visit them and pay their love and their honor to. It's hard to see that, you're so happy that they get that opportunity to talk to, talk to your old fishing buddy and to talk to so and so. But putting yourself in that situation of saying your goodbyes to all of your friends and all, it makes you empathize with the dying person just so much more than you already are just by default. And it makes me even more motivated to help him die the best death that he could, because if he's doing all of this, if I'm watching this person say goodbye to his best friend and his wife of 50 years and his daughters and all of these people, I think I can say goodbye to my grandpa. The next day was very difficult for me and my family. It had become clear that a downturn in his health was very obvious, and we were all preparing ourselves to deal with this. We were all trying to do our best to prepare ourselves, and as the second day came to nighttime, things got pretty serious. The end of life stages of a dying person, especially somebody dying of COPD, is hard to watch for anybody. But there are things you can do. You can provide support to the dying in terms of speaking to them, being next to them. As I was just saying, spending time with others in their presence, and being strong for them. Being strong for them. You can do it. I didn't think I could, but you can. To make this video as helpful as possible, I want to quickly move to the transition that he had at the end of his life. I want to talk about what that was like to be there, to see it, and to help in any way that I could. Well, speaking of the second night, as I just was, things were not getting better. They were getting worse very fast, and breathing becomes very spaced, it becomes very patterned, and what the physical body does, because we are apes in flesh, is uncomfortable to some family members, and of course me. But there's things that need to be done at this moment. So sometime around 11:50 p.m., the second night that I was there, it became obvious from the pattern of his breathing and many other signs that it was about to be time. So I am so proud to say this, but my family and I gathered around him and we all said our goodbyes. We all came together and showed immense strength in those final moments to usher him out of this world with love, compassion, acceptance, and I just hope just a deep, deep peace and a knowing that he had done well in this world and that we would carry his pattern forward in whichever way we could. And if we can't carry his physical form forward, so be it. We will carry forward the form of his personality through the stories that he shared with all the rest of us and that we made with him throughout our lives. And I knew in that moment, as I was with my family around my grandfather, as he took his final breaths, that this was something that would play an integral part in the rest of my life. That the dying process, I don't know how yet, is something that I want to help people go through. Maybe someday they'll return the favor, because my family was stunned. And I really hate trying to make myself sound like any type of hero here. We all played an equal role. But what I'm trying to express to you is that characteristics within me of deep love and tranquility emerged that I never knew I could activate in the face of this disaster. I never would have predicted it. I never would have. In the following week, I was the viewer of his cremation, and I wrote his obituary. And I probably will read that obituary at the end of this video, or I will link it in the description below. And it would mean a lot to me if you would listen to it or you would read it, because allowing that pattern that was my magnificently hilarious grandfather to live on in other people's minds is at this moment all we can really ask for. And speaking of all we can really ask for, what happened in this scenario is all you can ask for. What you get out of this life, if you play it right, is your loved ones around you when you leave. sending you fair wishes. That's what you get. You don't get the bank account, you don't get the car, you don't get any of it, okay? And I know you know this if you've been through this, and I'm not trying to patronize anybody, but there's a grim seriousness that I feel has emerged in me since seeing it actually happen that has inspired me to help others. I don't know what capacity I will be working with the dying in, but it would be beautiful to be able to somehow even help them with psychedelics as well. My grandfather was not a case where psychedelics would have helped. I know that. It wouldn't have. But to know that there are depressed individuals or struggling individuals that are on this journey out of this world, and that a substance with a guided hand could change their perspective as they leave, means the world to me. It means the world to me now.
But that's the whole thing, you see. It's this thing of rhythm. And yes, you ask, well, I see that. What is doing this rhythm? Who, after all, am I? And as you explore deeper and deeper and deeper into the nature of yourself, you find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. You find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. You find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. Rhythm doing a rhythm. Rhythm doing a rhythm doing a rhythm. You find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. You find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. You find that you're a rhythm doing a rhythm. And behind that was another rhythm doing a rhythm. Your vibration. And who is doing all? And who is doing all? Why, he disappeared around. There it was. We were looking for him and he vanished. And who is doing all? And who is doing all? Why, he disappeared around. There it was. We were looking for him and he vanished. And then just when we weren't looking for him again, there he is. But every time we try to see, he isn't there. Now do you see that? That situation is what's called life.